Hey guys! Welcome to the seminar Between Kidding and Kindness, Where Do You Draw the Line? My name is Ninja, and I'm part of the organizing committee for this event, which is the UWC, or the United Wageningen Committee. We are a committee dedicated to promoting inclusion at Wageningen University, and this particular event was made possible by the honors program, so we would like to thank them sincerely for that. We have an exciting lineup of events for you guys over the 3rd, 4th, and 7th of June. Tonight and tomorrow night, we have a speaker and comedian each who will be sort of opening up the conversation on discrimination and racism in humor. And on the 7th of June, in the afternoon, we will have a panel discussion where we have other speakers and comedians joining us to bring this conversation a little further. And I encourage the audience to ask your questions through the live chat, and you will have an opportunity to get your questions answered at the end of each segment. So to begin, I would like to invite Martijn Duineveld to the stage. Martijn is an associate professor at the Cultural Geography Group at Wageningen University, and he is also our honor supervisor. We are very excited and honored to have him here today. So the stage is yours, Martijn.
And thank you very much. So I'm here just, I have a very modest task. I have to introduce, I was asked to introduce the honors group. We don't have a, what's it called, teleprompter, so I have to look at my phone now and then. But I want to give a lot of compliments to my honors group, but it might be very boring for you people at home. So I will try to keep it as brief as possible. But we just heard Neranyanya speaking, but the honor group also consists of Inge, Niels, Katie, Rania, Riemer, and that's the group. And I've been working with them for, I was not missing anybody, huh? Oh God. So I've been working with them for 2 years now, and why would you do that? I mean, well, it's very simple. We have an honors program in Wageningen, and it means that students who want to, on top of their regular program, they can get 30 extra credits. And of course, it's not for them the credits, because who cares about 30 extra credits? Nobody will ever ask you about these credits. But it's about all the whole program is a sort of a way to deepen knowledge, but also to learn all kinds of additional things. Like, for example, a leadership training, talking to different experts, and it's more or less a way, this honors program, to open doors that normally or might be more likely to be closed if you're a regular student. Nothing wrong, by the way, with regular students. I also love to teach them, but honors students, they're quite special. They're very eager to learn. I should not say anything about why they're special, because it's always an insult, of course, for the regular students, and it's not meant like that. The interesting thing is they want this bunch of very motivated students, and then they also need what they call coaches. And I find it hard to imagine what it means to be a coach. I'm not supposed to tell them what to do, but I was asked them more or less to provide them with an assignment, so I did. I wrote an assignment, and the assignment was as follows. I wanted to investigate the world, which is becoming increasingly mobile. This was before the COVID crisis. So a world where we have tourists, refugees, workers who travel around the world and work behind their laptop and so on. And these, especially in big cities, these people, they increasingly live together. They're from all over the place, so to speak, and they share a singular space. And the idea was to look at the different tensions that then occur, and also to come up with sort of social technological solutions. Well, as I could have expected from an honors group, the first thing they more or less did was not following this assignment. They took it as a point of departure, but they didn't really did what I was expecting them to do. And since I was a coach, I could also not steer them into any direction. So they started to think about the topic of inclusion and exclusion and diversity at the university. And this was before the COVID crisis, as I said before. It was also before the last, the big Black Lives Matter movement, which I think already is present for years, but as we know, last year there was a big rise, and there was a lot of debate also in the Netherlands about questions of diversity and so on, and racism, institutionalized racism. Probably all of you have heard about it. So they came up with this idea, and they started to. And they told me, yeah, that's what we want to study, and we want to take Wageningen University, the campus where we are present almost every day. We want to take that as a point of study. And it was very interesting when they first presented it to me. I was very enthusiastic. I thought it was a brilliant idea. That's my role as a coach. I coached them to pursue. But they also talked about to other people, and they met with quite some skepticism. And it's more or less this. It's very interesting, and of course it's not nice that we had the COVID crisis, and also I wish we could live in a world where Black Lives Matter movement was not a necessity because there was no racism. But they really tapped into something that slowly became felt also as an urgency at Wageningen University. So to sum up, I would say that, and this is a sort of lesson maybe for students, I think you can be I should say a very good student when you have an assignment and you just start to do a terrific job in answering the questions that were given to you, to work on the problems, working together on the problems for the quality of life, that kind of stuff. That's brilliant, of course. But I think what makes an excellent student and what makes an excellent honors group is those who dare to problematize the problems that are given to them, those who dare to put aside the proposals that they get from their peers and from people different in the hierarchy, like professors and so on, and think for themselves and do a terrific job on the grounds that they produce themselves. So again, they only took this initial idea as a point of departure, but they more or less built not only a project, but also the foundations for the project themselves. So I'm super proud of this honors group, and I don't know where we go with time. Oh, I have to keep on. No, I wanted to say I'm urged to stop, but I have to keep on talking. Yeah. So it's great. Probably there's nobody watching right now because it's beautiful weather. But very soon, when you're home and it's rainy again, I hope you take some time to watch this. What is it? A podcast, and yeah, maybe an advice. And I get a lot of instruction from the director. Yeah. Okay. So I want to give the floor back to Ninja. I have to keep 1.5 meter distance, so I throw you the microphone.
Yeah, here you go. Good. Thank you so much, Martijn, for that wonderful opening speech. So we would like to invite our next and first speaker for the evening, who is Giselinde Kuipers. I hope I pronounced your name right. We're very, very honored to have her here today. She's going to be talking to us about ethnic humor and ethnic relations, and to give you a little bit more insight about it. So just give us a few minutes. We're having a few technical difficulties, and we'll get back to you shortly.
My PC is fucking crashing.
Is it back on again? No. Oh, wow, it's difficult with my glasses on. Hello, welcome back. I'm the third speaker. I'm looking in completely the wrong direction. It's a good start. I'm too used to talking over there. There's seats over there, but no one in them. And I get very stressed out on an empty stage. I feel bad for you. So, hello? That's creepy. I want to ask, where are you guys from? Like, tell us where you're, like, I can't sit here and do nothing. Where are you from? Let us know in the comments. Talk to me. Tell me who you are, what you're doing. You'll find out more about me later. In the meantime, I will find out about you. Well, I'm very excited to be here, awkwardly. Ninja, how is life going over there? Amazing. Are you enjoying this so far? Alibi to the technical issues? Or, well, you would be. I mean, you are my biggest fan. What can I say? Are you good to go? I came up here all for this, for nothing. I've been kicked out instantly. You let me know when I can leave this stage. Maybe at this rate, you know, like, as we try and fix the various Skype problems. I also thought it was great because Martijn was very, like, ahead of the times. He came up with his phone. He's like, okay, I have my notes. And I'm here with me 2 pieces of green paper going, I'm a little old-fashioned, but... You came with nothing, that's true. I mean, that sounds a little bit wrong, Ninja. You are wearing clothes, but we good to go? Ready to rock and roll? Okay, I'm leaving now. Nice to meet you. See you later. I don't know where you're from, but you'll get me later.
Okay, thank you so much, Emma, for saving us over there. I wish I could do that, but I can't. That's why we have Emma. But yeah, we solved the technical issues, and so I would like to welcome again Giselinde Kuipers. Thank you so much for being here, and the stage is yours.
Hebbes, ja, sorry. Nu wel? Ja. Ja, ik ben daar aan het werk. Het wordt aan gewerkt. Want ik had alles klaar zijn. Hello, everybody. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I'm also very, very sorry that I can't make it in person. But tomorrow actually is the day that I have my first vaccination, and it seemed a little unwise to take this risk so very, very close to the finish. But I'm really pleased to be here, and I think the program looks really fabulous, and I'm really sorry I can see all the other things. So I'm a professor of sociology at the KU Leuven, and I've been working on the study of humor for a long time, although you probably can hear it when I'm speaking English. I'm Dutch originally. I'm also in the Netherlands, and much of my research on humor was done in the Netherlands. So today I will talk to you about humor and othering. So latching on to the topic of your wonderful 3-day workshop program about between kidding and kindness, I'm giving an introduction about how humor works to establish boundaries between one group and the other. So how it serves to other people and how this is related to social relations. So I will give you some theoretical background on how humor works. I'll give you a specific case, and then I'll end with a number of dilemmas that I think you might be interested to talk about, not only with me, but also with other people during the remainder of these weeks, these days. So first of all, the program. So first I'll say something about what humor is, because humor is actually one of the most complicated forms of communications that human beings have. I specifically look at how humor others, and I will use a case study. My apologies, I'm not sure where that came from. I'll talk about what I see as a changing humor regime, so a very quick shift in how people have started to think about humor. And I think this might be what has given rise to the workshop that you have now. And then some questions under the sort of header of, aren't we even allowed to joke anymore? Which I think is something that we hear quite a lot in many different languages, where people are complaining that, everything used to be so nice and so funny, we could just have a wonderful sense of fun. And then all of a sudden, we're not even allowed to joke anymore. Before I go, is all well? Can you hear me? Is the technique going well? Is there anything I should change? Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. So the first question is, what is humor? Which is actually very difficult to answer. So I think many people will find that if they try to define what humor is, if they try to capture it, that they will sort of be at a loss for words and not really able to to figure out what it is that makes them laugh. And if you can't think through that, it's actually also very difficult to understand why something that is funny to one person is not funny to another. So very briefly, humor is what makes us laugh. But what makes us laugh actually is extremely complicated. And I like to say it's really an everyday miracle that we manage to pull off what is really an extremely complicated form of communication that draws upon a very, very large amount of cultural knowledge that is something that we do every day. So I think the first thing to remember or to understand if you think about humor is that it helps to think of the way that bats find its way in the world, because humor and laughter to a very large extent can be likened to how bats find their way, and I'm sure you may know. So what bats do is they use this signal, so they use an echoing signal where they send out sort of signals all the time, and on the basis of the echo, they know where they are and where they're going. To a very large extent, humor functions like this. It's human beings, very, very deeply social beings, constantly sending out signals to the social world around them, trying to figure out if they're on the same page with other people. So what you do when you joke, when you try to tell a joke, is you figure out, do these people see the same world as I do? Do they understand things in the same way? So it's a way to test if people are literally on the same page. So if you tell a joke and it works well, it will be rewarded. You will get the echo of laughter or of a smile or of a nod. And if your joke falls flat or dies, as comedians say, that means that you haven't been able to achieve this echo. So that also explains why it feels so bad if you tell a joke and it falls flat. So comedians, I think you might hear about this more, literally call this dying on stage, because it's a moment where you discover that you're not on the same page with people. So it's a very complicated form of communication that is really, above all else, is to figure out if people belong to the same group, if they are like you. So instead of a definition, and many people have tried to give definitions of humor, but that's actually very, very difficult. So I've made a list of 5 of the ingredients of humor. And these 5 ingredients is something that you see in humor around the world. So the first is, and I think this already came through in my definition of humor as being like the sonar of a bat, is that humor is deeply social and it's connected with the very sociable expression and emotion of laughter. So humor is not the only way, but it's the most common and most preferred way of eliciting laughter in others, which not only is a pleasant experience, but also if you manage to make someone else laugh, it's a very pleasant experience because it has a very strong expression of togetherness. And if you are laughing with others, then people who are not in on the laughter tend to feel excluded. And this is something that I think we all recognize, that the moment that you, for instance, you enter a large room and there will be people laughing on the other side of the room, there is a slight sense of discomfort. So you want to know what's going on there. So there's something in a group of people laughing together that really establishes them as together, having fun, as in a way as it establishes their groupness. And this is something that people want to belong to. So the social aspect of humor and the connection with laughter is one of the ingredients. So the second ingredient is that humor is always based on what specialists call incongruity. So humor is based on on something that doesn't exactly fit, so that somehow breaks the pattern of expectation. So you see this really clearly in jokes where, a man comes into a bar and he walks into a bar again, and the third time something odd happens that doesn't make sense and then makes sense in another way. But actually, if you start to look at it, really all forms of humor are based on a break of a pattern of expectation. So something happens that doesn't make sense, but does make sense in another more humorous way. And that's actually a very complicated form of cognition, in the sense that you have to share the same understanding of what is expected and what is not expected in order to appreciate how a joke works. The third element is non-seriousness. Non-seriousness means that humor, in essence, is a form of play. So many mammals, as I assume you know, play, which means that they can have shared interactions which are based on sort of mock versions of other things, like mock fighting, for instance, is a form of play. And what you can do is signal that it's like something, but it's not the real thing. So it's not to be taken seriously. It's not to be believed. And what humor does, it's a cognitive or a symbolic form of play. So it's a play with meanings. And you signify that you're not serious. That's only a joke, that is not meant to be believed, by a number of signals, for instance, doing something with your face, but also by showing that you're really very different from other people. So there are many signals, but very often these signals can be very subtle, and you have to know that something is that someone behaves in a certain way to read this person as a joke. And also, as I think that's something that comes up a lot in the current discussion about whether humor is okay or not, is you can actually also use this as a cop-out. So you can sort of say something and then leave it sort of ambivalent if you're joking or not. And depending on how it's received, or if people get angry, you can sort of cop out and say, no, but I was only joking. So non-serious means that the meaning of what you say is somehow between quotation marks. And that can be done in many ways. And actually most of everything, all humor has this aspect of non-seriousness. So the third, and now you see why humor is really complicated, is humor is very often, not always, but very often transgressive. So in this combination of non-seriousness, sociability, and incongruity, very often it means that not only things are unexpected in a cognitive way, but unexpected in the sense that they break taboos, that they touch on things that are painful, that they transcend societal boundaries. So it means that many jokes have to do with things that are supposed to be a little sensitive or complicated, like sex or gender relations or body fluids, that they play on gender normativity, as you can see here. So very often humor just is a very careful dosage between going just a bit further than is allowed societally, but not too much, because then it's not funny anymore and then it's painful. But that's, of course, also something where people are not in agreement about, not even in the same culture. And then finally, because of this non-seriousness, humor always very often also touches on, so appeals to a sense of superiority. So that means very often it pokes fun at something. So it pokes fun at something that might be prestigious, like in this case, the King of the Netherlands, who is, as you can see, not taken entirely seriously. So what humor does, it flattens things, it degrades things, because if you take something not completely seriously, it means that you make it less important, that you look down upon. So there is very often a sense of superiority in humor, in the sense that if you laugh at something or you laugh at someone, you elevate yourself above this. Now, as you can imagine, with a combination of these things, all of in themselves are actually quite complicated. It has to do with group boundaries. It has to do with what is expected and not. It has to do with what is allowed and not. It has to do with being not serious in relation to something else, which means that humor is an unusual, complex, and ambiguous form of human interaction. And what it does, because of this complexity and ambiguity, it marks and reinforces group boundaries. So humor is a very strong way of understanding. If you can understand that what I'm saying, this is joking, it means that you are like me, that we see the world in the same way. And it also means that we are sort of together, feel not only like a tiny conspiracy, but also slightly better than many of the others. So it marks and reinforces group boundaries, and it does so in a way that is complicated because it's at the same time subtle. So it's very difficult to point out why it is so painful that people joke and you're not in on the joke. But it's also very strong because of the very strong sense of togetherness that is created. So humor is really, it's a miracle. It's an everyday miracle that every single person dozens of times every day is able to create a joke without thinking about it, doing it in such a way, reaching other people who will understand it, and sort of feeling that you're on the same page. And this leads also, and that's where the problem comes in, it leads to othering, inclusion and exclusion on the basis of social identity and background, because humor is such a strong marker of seeing the world in the same way. It also means that everybody who is defined or has felt as slightly different for these persons, it will be more difficult to gain access to this in-group thing. So othering sometimes can be an accidental by effect of, people just, being on the same page, but also it can sometimes be a much more open, overt way of excluding people. So I've written about this, and this is where the title of this talk comes from, which is the title that I haven't suggested myself. It comes from a study that I published 5 years ago with one of my students at the time about ethnic humor and social change, or ethnic humor and ethnic relations. And what I think is interesting there is, if you look at the Dutch situation, you see that jokes about ethnic groups are not only very prevalent and very dominant. So we collected jokes. So I collected jokes first in the 1990s for my own MA thesis, and then we did it again over almost 20 years later with the students. And you can see that what humor does, and I'll show it here, is that jokes, so we're talking about moppen here, so canned jokes, is that jokes very strongly follow the social hierarchy, both in the sense that the lower a specific group is in the social hierarchy, the more jokes there will be about this group, and also the harsher the jokes will be about this group. And you can see that over time, as specific groups became more marginalized and came to the fore, more jokes evolved around them. So we see that jokes in many different can actually be very active ways of excluding out groups, ridiculing them to foster a sense of self-identity. Now, how this works is something that I want to show you with a specific case. So there are many different cases. I'm sure you can think of many moments when you felt that humor has played a role in this process of othering, that is excluding and including on the basis of identity. And I suppose this is also one of the reasons that you organized this symposium in the beginning, because this is something that you can feel specifically in mixed, international, diverse societies, where you can very easily feel how humor is one of the ways in which people sort of stick together and other people feel excluded. So there's one case that I want to share with you. I will not share the joke, but it's easy to find if you want to, but I'll explain enough about it to understand it. And I suppose many of you will have heard about it because it was it hit the news quite dramatically. And it's this. So it's a song that was made about, so if this would have been live, unfortunately, I would have asked you if you know this. So this is a song that came up around Carnival of 2020. So just last year as the COVID pandemic started hitting, and there was a carnival song, which was called in Dutch voorkomen, actually it's not right here, is beter dan genezen, which is a pun on prevention is better than curing, but it's also on Chinese, which is Chinezen. So it was a joke about how the COVID pandemic at that time was still something that the Chinese brought to us. And I think that the clear senses that I picked out here from the subtitled version is, we don't need that in our country. We moeten dat niet hebben in ons land. And it was a carnival song. So it's a very specifically understandable form of singing which is supposed to be very funny in a sort of outrageous way. It comes with a lot of punning, lots of jokes about Chinese. It was sung in an audience with people laughing. So in many different ways, this had all the ingredients that we know that I just described of humor. So this was in-crowd, in-group humor, joking. It was a little transgressive. So all of the things that we see was it was humor. It was, let's be very clear. So by the sort of standards of how but it was also very clear that many people didn't think it was very funny because it was offensive, because it was insulting, because it excluded a specific group. It was about a pandemic. It was seen as a new form of anti-Asian racism that we see a lot. So this is an interesting case to think through how this othering works through humor, and also why it's so difficult, and I think that's important, why it's so difficult to do something about this. So first, think about the song, and I suppose if you haven't heard it, I think you get the gist of the thing. It's easy to find. There are also translations on YouTube, so subtitled version. So how does this song mark boundaries? So first of all, very clearly, if we think of the 5 ingredients, it leads to laughing together with those who understand the jokes. So you can see it in the original clip, but also in the way that it was usually received, is that this is really funny. It leads to a very strong sort of raucous laughter with those who understand, who are in on the joke. So it's a very, very strong way of provoking this sense of humor is something, of a group of people being together, laughing at a specific thing and sort of having this bat effect. We are on the same page. Look at how we're all having fun about this specific joke. So it's social, it's a pleasant feeling, and it's a sense of groupness that is produced by this. And obviously, just this sort of laughing together can be really unpleasant for those who don't find this particularly funny. It's very, as I said, it can be very uncomfortable to be with people who are laughing at something and you're like, I don't really think this is funny. Is there something about me? Why am I laughing? So it's just not being in on the joke in itself can be a very painful experience because it touches on the sort of the core of our social being. So this is really a feeling that should not be underestimated in the so it has been described as a form of social pain. So second, it is based on incongruity and resolution because it's based, first of all, on a knowledge of a Dutch colloquialism. Voorkomen is beter dan genezen, so it's a pun. But also the entire song is full of these sorts of references that you have to be able to understand and decode, for which you need not only to understand Dutch, but also to have knowledge of a number of references that Dutch people will immediately know. So voorkomen is beter dan genezen is not a particularly, dan Chinees is not a particularly strong pun, but it has this sort of joke structure. So it's wrong, but then it's right in a different way. So thirdly, very clearly, there are many ways in which this is framed as non-serious. So think of the guy with the kettle on his head. So there are many forms of non-serious framing that really make it clear that this is a joke. So there is the accent of the singers, there's a specific form of music, which is carnival music, which really denotes fun and joking, and it's a very specific. So there are many forms of humorous keying here that are all really easy to pick up for natives. So if you're Dutch, so from the first bar, you will know immediately that this is supposed to be funny. This also opens up this domain of freedom, because it's just a joke. We can say all these sorts of things that you're not supposed to say. So that brings about the fourth element of the transgressive references. So obviously, you're not supposed to say these things about Chinese people. It's not even clear if you're supposed to joke about illnesses, maybe not so much, although it wasn't that clear over a year from now. So there are many references that people know you should not do, but the fact that you do it and you don't go too far, so it's not real aggression. You don't say, you don't say the most terrible things about Chinese. You just say somewhat terrible things about Chinese. So there's a very careful dosage of going over a boundary, but not too far. So it's just the right dosage for a specific group of natives in the context of this carnival feeling. And then we have the element of superiority or hierarchy that I refer to. So it is a clear example of laughing down at a group that in the Dutch society doesn't have a very dominant position. So it's also not a group that is completely marginalized or stigmatized, but it's definitely a group of people that has been, so Chinese in the Netherlands have been around for a long time. They're recognized as not the most stigmatized, so not on the level of, as you saw from the table, the Moroccans, for instance, but definitely also lower in the ethnic hierarchy than the native Dutch. So all the elements are there, and you can see how if you add all this up, there is a strong pattern where it's us Dutch versus them Chinese, and maybe also us Rotterdam jovial Dutch against them Chinese, and also all them others who are too politically correct to enjoy this harmless bit of fun. So there is a double politics in there in marking boundaries. And what it highlights is that it's actually, I think this is very important, because that it's extremely difficult to respond to a joke at your expense. And that's one of the reasons why the boundary marking is so very subtle and so effective, because there are actually not a lot of good ways to respond. So one of the things you can do, which is also something that happened last year, is to go to the judge. So this, as the Chinese community sues or litigates because of discriminating and hate inciting song. So this is one of the things you can do. The other thing you can do is joke back. So this is this says the Chinese answer, prevention is better than Holland, Radio 10. And one of the things in sort of typical Chinese-ish font is Heineken, you can't call that beer. So that's another way. So you can joke back. But I think both of them are slightly problematic in the sense that, I mean, the joke is still there, and I think we would probably agree that the second part would be a slightly more dignified than the others, maybe joking back or maybe not. But the problem always when there is a joke at the expense of you as a person or as a group is that it's very difficult to respond with dignity. So to respond in a way that will be perceived as stylish or classy, or a way to sort of maintain your social status and your social standing and a good feeling about yourself. So this is also something, so I'm just giving this as an introduction, something that I wrote about in several articles. So one, I did an analysis of the Danish cartoon controversy, which is already 15 years ago, but I think which has really changed the way we think about this. And I made an analysis of satire and dignity, where I specifically looked at the different forms of ways in which to respond. And what I show in the second article is that what you can do, you can laugh along with the joke at your expense, which is not a very nice feeling, but it's something that conventionally happened. You can joke back. So that's the response of making the counter song, which is actually can be very classy, but you have to have a lot of power and social organization to be able to pull this off. You can argue. So you can say that's not funny, which is very difficult. You can retaliate. So like in a serious way. So for instance, go to the judge, which also is something that is not available to all. You can show anger, which is usually seen as loss of face, or you can do nothing and withdraw. So basically all of these options, this is what you have available. And typically many of these options are either psychologically unsatisfactory or sort of tend to reinforce your low social status. So it is a predicament that is very, very difficult to escape from. And I think this is exemplified by a joke that I very often tell to show how difficult it is to do something about this. So this is, I'm not sure if you're aware of the cycle of light bulb jokes. So this is an English language cycle. How many somethings does it take to screw in a light bulb? So one of the jokes is how many feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb? So this joke refers to the fact that feminists are supposed to not have a sense of humor, like the Muslims after the cartoon crisis, and maybe also like Chinese when they complained about the jokes, and not only this one. And the answer is, that's not funny. So that's a joke that I tell to great success in many talks, but it exemplifies something really painful in the sense that saying that something is not funny when it's a joke at your expense is considered in itself as a bad answer. So it's typical of humorless people that don't know how to deal with the joke. But painfully, it also illustrates that people with a marginalized or less powerful social position actually can't really do much. So they will say, I don't particularly enjoy it that you joke about me like this because, you know, I don't really like it. And then you don't have a sense of humor, and not having a sense of humor is also supposed to be a loss of face. So the interesting thing, and I think this is really the heart as many of the debates that we have now, is that we feel that it's really bad to reject a joke. So if someone makes a joke at your expense, so what is expected is that you laugh along always, even when you're a woman or when you're a feminist or when you're Chinese or when you whatever. And if you don't have a sense of humor. And that's actually interesting, because what I would like to invite you to do in the remainder of this talk is to think through why it is so bad to reject a joke, and why it's such a horrible thing to not have a sense of humor, to the point that people will, you know, go to great length and sort of laugh along at jokes because they don't want to show that they don't have a sense of humor. And what I want to sort of suggest to you is that we have in contemporary European and North American societies, and I've actually studied this in the Netherlands, but also in various European countries and in the US, we have a humor regime where having a sense of humor is seen as a very, very central part of your personality, and really the core of how you're supposed to behave to others. And that this humor regime is changing now because it is challenged in a number of different ways. So this humor regime sets the informal rules of humor in contemporary European and North American cultures. So this is sort of understanding that we have of what humor is, how you should use it, and how you should respond to it. And there is actually so much consensus about this humor regime that it's very easy, if you go for memes, that you can actually sort of explain it in memes that are, you know, very prevalent everywhere. So one of the memes that we have is a good sense of humor, and I think it's interesting that this is very often reiterated. So it shows that this is a rule that needs some reinforcement. So it's better to tell a joke at the expense of yourself, or to joke about people in charge or in leadership positions, but not to punch down. That would be so. We understand the problem of humor, and we solve it by saying, don't joke at people who don't have a powerful position. So actually, if you remember the table that I showed, it's actually a rule that we don't really stick to that much. But this is one of the ways that we've tried to cope with the problems of humor as a form of communication that on the one hand we like and we really appreciate, but we see that it has some problematic things. So we have a rule. So the other thing is that humor is a very good thing. I think this is very central to the humorism. So you got to keep a sense of humor, because humor is very good. So even if people joke at you and you're Chinese and you got to be able to smile. So humor is good because it shows something very central about your personality. And the third thing is that it's really, if it's just a joke, you should be able to take it. Keep calm. It's just a joke. If people are joking at your expense, then you should be able to take it, because the joke is not serious, people, so you should not take it. And interestingly, what we see is that all of these elements have been challenged increasingly over the past decade or so. And interestingly, mostly after the Danish cartoon crisis, we saw that many of these maxims of how to think about humor have been challenged quite a bit. So we also see that humor is seen as a very important social and political corrective. So I'm sure you've heard of Charlie Hebdo, the French magazine, which sort of proudly presents itself as an irresponsible newspaper, whereas a responsible newspaper would mean an end to laughter. So humor is also seen as an important critique, as a counterforce to power. And finally, it means that if you're authentic, then you shouldn't fall for political correctness. So the rules that people try to establish when it comes to humor. So if you're a real, authentic, strong individual, you should really continue joking even when you know some people won't like that, because, you know, political correctness and sort of controlling yourself would be a terrible idea. And I think what we're changing is interesting. And really, for me, this is really fascinating because I've been studying humor for a long time now. So ever since my master's thesis, so we're talking about the early 90s, so this is a long time ago. And I saw that it was the same set of normative rules around humor. So people were reiterating, you have to be able to take a joke. It's good to have a sense of humor. It's really not very nice to complain about this because you should be able to take it. And over the past years, I've seen a change in this humor regime. So, and that means that humor has emerged as a contested arena in the so-called culture wars. And I'm sure that you've seen this because it hits universities specifically everywhere in Europe and the US. It's also sometimes referred as cancel culture, which I think is a horrible mistake. So what happens, first of all, is that we see emancipation processes. So we see that for a long time, there was a division of labor, you could say, where some people had a lot of freedom to tell jokes. So for instance, men would tell jokes about women, white people would tell jokes about non-whites. So all of these older people will tell jokes about younger people. So there was a very clear division of labor that you could actually see is, some people have all the freedom to tell jokes. And then many others are expected to sort of laugh along. And I think with gender, this is the clearest example that for a long time, still humor is supposed to be something that men do well, and women are supposed to be laughing at men's jokes. I think that's mostly, and increasingly women have been saying, well, we don't particularly enjoy this, and we would, we can also be funny, so why don't you give the floor to us? And also, by the way, we don't really enjoy it that you joke about women all the time. And this is a very quick shift, and these emancipation processes actually is a moment where some people with a lot of power to joke were challenged by people with much less power to joke, and you actually see a more even division of joking and being joked at. And this is something that we see with gender very specifically, also with sexual minorities, but also increasingly, I would say, with people who are of non-white or non-native descent. So the second thing that we see in the culture wars, and this has really made this much stronger, is the rise of social media. So social media have changed another division of labor, where you have the people who were making jokes in public, had control over the audiences, were the comedians on the stage or the comedians with the TV screens, and everybody else who was just the audience. And in social media, first of all, the audience has started talking back. And there have been many more people who have been trying to be funny. So again, the spread of both deciding what is funny and to be funny, and the spread of and the spread of this is, I'll explain you later. This was actually a very interesting explanation of what just happened, illustration. So the spread of people who can be funny, but also the capacity to contest jokes and to talk back means that comedians have lost their monopoly very much on deciding what is funny, because everybody has the access to the public arena, including calling out people for joking. What also has happened, and I think that is what I call context collapse. And context collapse is actually exactly what happened just now when my son was crying behind the door. Because what happens with social media is that so many forms of humor were relying on the fact that there is, small groups where you with a specific group of friends where you can share a number of transgressive jokes because it's among your circle of friends. So many of the jokes, for instance, that we collected about ethnic minorities in the Netherlands, everybody knew that the jokes couldn't be told in public spheres, but you will tell them with your friends in the football canteen, or with your colleagues, or in a bar, or in a family gathering. So you can tell many jokes that you can tell them in a private sphere, but not in a public sphere. But what social media does is collapse all these contexts. So you can tell a joke, what you think would be a very nice joke for your friends, but then it's Facebook, and your colleagues will be there, and your boss, and your grandmother, and your aunt that you haven't seen forever. So context, and so the private-public distinction that is really important for maintaining this sort of tiny conspiracy feel is also collapsing. And that also has made humor more contested, in the sense that this, now we can tell a joke about Turks or Moroccans because we know who we are, but there are not really that many situations where we know where we are. And that means that people will call you out, and that you will have to do something about this. So the contexts that used to be very nicely separated have collapsed. And then finally, increasingly over the past 2 years, you've seen social and political polarization, where people have used jokes to really actively provoke people into sort of showing them, in sort of highlighting the conflicts. So, and I'm sure you're aware of specifically the alt-right that really has used humor as a way to sort of provoke people and to create very specific, outlandish sort of forms of groupness based on telling jokes that many people would really find offensive. So social and political polarization has also led to humor being at the heart of many of the debates, including some people claiming the right to joke about everything, and other people, mostly on the left, but also in the center, increasingly saying, there are really problems with some sorts of jokes. So the humor has been really the arena, the central place where many of these fights have been fought, and this has led to redefinition or rethinking or
Back again. Emma's back. I'm not a very good singer, to be honest. Again, a few technical issues. As they say, the show is on a budget. We do not have Zoom Professional, and it cuts out after 45 minutes, it turns out. So we are working on getting that speaker back. In the meantime, do we know who's has my question been answered from earlier on? Did anyone want to talk to me? Someone talk to me. I need something to talk about. I feel like being a comedian is a bit like, it's been like being a radio host. You just kind of speak awkwardly to no one in particular. I also love the fact that we have to keep the 1.5 meter distance, but we're sharing the spitting machine. That doesn't seem COVID friendly, but okay. How's it going over there? Did anyone tell me where they're from? Where are they from? Ada, wow, we are exotic this evening. We are going all out. We have spread across the world. Anywhere else? Anyone more exotic, less exotic? Or is Ada the epitome of what we're going to find? The others are from Wageningen. There is nothing else in between. We just have one exotic person in Ada. Hello to the person in Ada. Welcome. This must be very exciting for you to join an event in Wageningen from the computer. We were told that we might have an audience at some point here, but when's the theatres opening? Is it officially tomorrow? I can't remember. Isn't it soon? It's next week, is it? I was getting excited about the potential of potentially meeting real people. Well, I've got stressed now from life. Do you ever have that? I was walking here, and I have clearly not seen people in months. I've just lived in my cave, in my studio, and been I don't talk to people. And I was walking here, and there was so many people out and about, I felt awkward. And then I realized when I got here that actually there wasn't that many people out and about. It was just more than I'm used to. So yes, here we go. Where else? Anywhere else? Nothing. What? Delft! Goodness, welcome from Delft. You really are exotic. I feel like we need to cross borders. That would be ideal. Could we go? We have someone from Belgium, but she's currently trying to fix her Zoom call. Afsluitdijk. Wait, what? Afsluitdijk. Where on earth is Afsluitdijk? I love that you were very specific. It was a bit like someone giving their address. Where is? Does anyone know where Afsluitdijk is? The Afsluitdijk. It is the Afsluitdijk. The one and only. Oh, I thought it was Afsluitdijk, but no, it is the Afsluitdijk. And we still don't know where the Afsluitdijk is, do we not? It is the wall. Wait, let's take a second here. Let's take a second. It is the wall that. The border. Okay. Oh, it is genuinely a dike. Yeah. So you're just sitting on a dike awkwardly going, hey, what is this thing I'm attending? Like, it's just the greatest thing ever. We really should invest in Zoom. I feel like that's the solution to this problem. From Frankfurt, that's exciting. Do you like Frankfurters? This is my big question. And yes, that is stereotyping. And yes, I'm okay with it. But let us... Sorry? Chris in the audience says, oh goodness, that I know... How do you spell this, Chris? Oh, he's from Benecom. I know him. I went with the easy option is how do you... Because I've never seen so many writings of Chris. C-R-I-S, I met one of those here. K-R-I-S, this is degraded into the worst comedy set ever. C-H... Oh, wait, I can't spell. C-H-R-I-S, that's the normal one that I'm used to. So many Chris's. So if I know the spelling, maybe I know where they're from. Frankfurt's rather exciting, though. Anywhere else? Anywhere else? Let me know. If you're somewhere more exotic. I mean, right now, Ada's winning. I think we've all considered that to be the best place available. In the meantime, I'll talk about myself. Awkwardly, how do you like our theatre? It's good to be back. I have not been here for 455 days. Because let's be honest, if you're a live performer and you thrive off of live performing arts, it's a bit like going through a dry spell. You know exactly when the last time was. 1 year, 2 months, 29 days. So yeah, I did have a fling with a stand-up comedy night in September, but we won't talk about that. 3 times in one night, actually. I'm hoping we get to do live events again.
Ja, ik ben daar. Als je me even laat share, ik ben aan de conclusie. Ik had nog 5 minuten nodig.
Someone's just like... Can I what? Oh, yeah, no, you're talking to her. Right, this is awkward. We're getting a 3-way conversation all the way round. We good? Oh, excellent. I can leave the stage and...
Je moet me even laten screenshare.
In a few minutes. Goodbye.
Ja. Aha, oké. Ja, maar ik wil het heel graag afmaken. Ik heb nog 5 minuten voor de conclusie. Dat is heel graag. Maar dan wil ik even mijn scherm nog even sharen. Ja. So, I'm back again. Sorry about that. But here I am going to the conclusion. So the conclusion being the common complaint that I think many of you have heard in many different languages. Mag je dan nergens meer een grapje over maken? Aren't we even allowed to joke anymore? Because that's the question that we often hear when we talk about these sort of increasing awareness that you could say about how humor may be exclusive or how it may other, and also this changing humor regime that we see. So aren't we allowed to joke anymore? And I think the first answer, yes, we are, but there's the real and the growing possibility that your audience will not like it. So that's one of the things. So with these context collapse and this increasing awareness of how it works, it will be more and more likely that people will push back, which is okay, right? I mean, in the context of freedom of speech, you may joke, but then other people may have the freedom to say that they don't like it. But I think this is something that many people see as a spoil sport. So yes, we are, but the other thing is, so you may be confronted with pushback. And increasingly, sometimes you need to apologize. So this is something that's also, so you can still joke, but maybe people will not like it and will expect you to say, I'm sorry, or to sort of withdraw your joke. And this comes with a dilemma. Because the joker is not in charge of the real meaning of their joke. So that's increasingly, if you say it's just a joke, we will not accept that at face value. But then again, neither is the recipient. So you cannot say, I don't think this is funny, I don't like this, and then everybody switch up joking. So how to balance these interpretations? So if it's not the joker who is right, so is the most aggrieved always right? So the person who is hurt most, and is that the way we want to go? So this is the first dilemma. The second, yes, we are still allowed to joke, of course, but there's more risk in a globalized social media world that it might end up with someone who really, really does take offense. And to have a very dramatic example of Charlie Hebdo, but there are also much less dramatic examples of a joke that was meant to be private and that has gone rampant and then people will take offense. And this comes with another real dilemma. So what if people become afraid of joking in public? And there are some signs that we see now. For instance, the New York Times, which last year stopped, 2 years ago, stopped running all editorial cartoons. So saying we will stop with using humor altogether because it's just too complicated. And that is maybe also not what we want. So what do we want then? So the real dilemma, and this is where I want to end, is how to keep the good things of humor, because humor has a number of really proven very good things, while alleviating the possibly bad things, including hurting othering people, in a phenomenon that is so slippery, that is so difficult to touch, where good and bad are both ambiguous, apologies for the typo, and closely intertwined. So humor can do good things, but even the sort of the group cohesive things also is something that can be a bad thing. And so the good and the bad are both there, and they're also very closely connected. And in thinking this through, how should we wake the interest and feelings of different groups? So who is right? So it's definitely not the sort of white male older jokers that always have had the opportunity to joke about everything. But obviously it's not the opposite, that everybody's unhappy should get their way and stop people joking. And then the final question, this is actually even more complicated. Can we even influence this process? And if so, how, in what direction? So what should we do if we have the opportunity to change how we think about humor? And we're not even sure if it has, but then what should we do? So this is actually a number of questions for which there are no simple, easy answers. So this is really something that will require concerted thinking, and I hope that's what you will do in the next few days. So I thank you for your attention. And here I am without the screen.
For your very insightful and amazing talk. It was really we learned a lot. We actually, encourage anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, to ask them now over the live chat, and then I will receive them and I will be able to ask her. In the meantime, we do have one question from the live audience here, who are just a group. So how do you deal with the situation where you feel the joke is not appropriate for everyone, but everyone else in the circle finds it funny? So you personally don't find the joke appropriate, but everybody else laughs. So how do you deal with a situation like that?
So I think what I've tried to show is that there really are no easy or one-size-fits-all answers there. So partly the how to deal with this depends on the options that you have. So as I tried to show, depending on how much power you have or how much self-confidence you have, you will have more or less opportunities to choose. So if you feel really powerless and excluded and you don't know the people or you don't feel at home, probably there's nothing much you can do except for sort of laugh along or sort of wait until it passes. So if you have a stronger position in a specific group, it means that you can list a number or think through a number of different options, including joking back, saying that you don't like it. But all of these options come with potential pushback. So you'll always be a spoilsport. It's very difficult. So the most sovereign way of dealing with this probably is to, if you're very quick, is to joke back. So to come up with another joke that is funny and that shows that you don't like. But that's like the sort of superstardom of coping with it. And this is something that is not only a personal capacity, but also comes with the sort of power that you have in a specific situation. All the other options, saying you don't like it, remain silent, become angry, are increasingly problematic. But there is no sort of one thing that you should do. I think if it was that easy, we would have solved it. I mean, that's the problem. And you're also never going to be sure how it lands, depending on how sympathetic the group will be to you. So it's complicated, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I can understand. Thank you. Yeah. Just to sort of take that question a little further, do you think that by laughing at a supposedly racist joke or a joke that you find racist, does it perpetuate that racism or take it forward, or
not necessarily. So that's the thing. Probably very often, yes, somewhat. So it usually resonates with so to work a joke has to resonate with the knowledge that you have, which is something that I showed in the beginning. So you have to understand that's what something is about in order to be able to read it. So in that sense, it has to refer to an existing idea.
Okay.
So it also, so it builds on this, it perpetuates this. It also, it can, so social psychological research has shown that it can also lower your boundaries. So if you define it as humorous, then it becomes easier to say, this is not serious, so we can laugh along. So it also lowers, in a sense, it weakens your resistance. But then again, there are also many situations where I think we've all experienced that laughing at particularly stereotypes can be liberating, because you poke fun at the stereotypes, or because you show it's not about you, or because you subvert them. So it's, again, if it were that easy, then we could just say, no, we'll stop it and then the racism will end. This is not how it works. And I think there are many good examples of also anti-racist or anti-sexist comedians that have taken on these stereotypes and sort of inflated them and mocked them and sort of showed how bizarre they are by making them really big. And that can actually be a way to attack it. So just saying we should stop with, apart from that, it's not possible to stop, these sort of societal beliefs. It's also, it's not the only possible way to eradicate stereotypes or racist or sexist or etc. beliefs.
Thank you. And just one last question from the audience, a short question. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with just rolling your eyes and sighing? That's something that, yeah.
No, it's not wrong. It's really, this is, so I think for a long time, I think many people did believe that it was wrong. It's much less understood as wrong now than it was 20 years ago. But you are considered to be something of a spoil sport. And I think many people who have tried the rolling your eyes and sighing thing know that it doesn't feel really nice. So it's something, so you can feel sort of really like a spoil sport and you're spoiling the mood. Also, you can feel very alone. You'll feel excluded, especially when everybody's laughing. So there is, in this sort of, very visceral way that humor and laughter works, it's very difficult to sort of step out of this circle of laughing people. So it's not wrong in the sense that, I'm not here to tell you what you should do, but I'm just trying to think through why it is so difficult to do it. And it's difficult because it means that you exclude yourself from a social process and a collective feeling that is very pleasant. And when you roll your eyes and sigh, you don't feel nice, and people will feel a little bit put off by how you behave. And this is how the process works.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
So I'm not here to tell you what you do. Heavens no.
Definitely.
But it helps
so
why it's so difficult. Yeah.
That was very, very helpful. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you once again for being here. We were very honored to have you and very happy to have you. We have a small token of our appreciation, but since you aren't here in person, we'll give it to you soon. Thank you so much, and thank you once again for being here.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me. And again, it's really a shame that I haven't been here in person, and also that I can't see you now. So I'm looking at an N, and I really hope you will have a good conversation in the days to come.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Okay, so thank you again, Giselinde, for giving us that wonderful speech and just taking us a little bit into the world of humor and racism. We will now have a short 10 to 15 minute break, so you can take this time to go to the bathroom, drink some water, make a joke, or not. But we also have some fun stuff happening in the meantime, so you can also just stay tuned and be there, and also engage with us if you would like. And then after the break, we have the fabulous Emma Holmes, who is going to take us to the second half of the evening. Thank you very much.
It was James Acaster. I burst into tears.
Named you in full?
Full?
Yeah.
I'm crying. She said to me, you should know better. Which even as a 5-year-old, I remember thinking, I'm 5. The reason why I messed up is because I don't know any better.
Yeah.
It was actually my undoing that I don't know any better. He's my accomplice and he's dogged me out.
Yeah.
And afterwards I said to him, and like, he was 5 as well, and he said this to me. I said to him, you said she was your least favourite person in the class. And he looked at me and he went, second least favourite. As a 5-year-old.
The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid has been surrounded with controversy since its release in 1989. On the original VHS cover art, people were shocked to see the phallic-shaped object hidden within the towers of the Golden Castle. Disney and the artist both claimed it wasn't intentional. There were tons of subliminal messages in this movie, but that wasn't all. There were also some racial stereotypes that we will fill you in on in case you missed them before. In the movie's hit song, Under the Sea, the character Sebastian the Crab is singing about how life is fun when you live carefree and have very few responsibilities.
That is a big mistake.
This normally wouldn't be an issue, but Sebastian has a heavy Jamaican accent. This led many to believe that Disney was stereotyping Jamaicans by calling them lazy. Not only was Sebastian under scrutiny, but also the Duke of Soul and the Blackfish characters appear with large, oversized lips and Black American voices. What do you think of these stereotypes hidden in the movie? Did you see them when you first watched the movie?
How do I get myself into these situations?
Oh boy, fellas, let's rock the joint.
The Aristocats. The Aristocats is released in 1970, centers around a family of aristocratic cats, hence the film's name, and how a cat from the other side of the tracks helps them regain their fortune. In the movie, Duchess is a white, wealthy cat who raises her kittens in luxury, and Thomas O'Malley is an alley cat who wanders through the streets. When Duchess and her kittens are introduced to Thomas's gang, they are all racially stereotyped. Pepe is the womanizing Italian cat who wears a red scarf. Shungan is Chinese and has slanted eyes, buck teeth, and plays the piano with chopsticks. And Billy Ross, the Russian cat, who looks a lot like Joseph Stalin. What did you think of the Aristocats?
This is outrageous. It's crazy.
What made the red man red? What made the red man red?
Peter Pan. If you think Pocahontas was the first time that Disney depicted Native Americans as noble savages, think again. Remember Peter Pan? It is a little hard to believe that a children's movie about fantasy and adventure could have racist elements in it, but it is Disney after all.
We are Siamese, if you please.
Lady and the Tramp. Of course, most people remember Lady and the Tramp from the infamous spaghetti scene. It's forever ingrained in our minds. The movie stood out for another reason that wasn't romantic or touching. If you remember, there are 2 Siamese cats, who just so happen to be named Si and Am, who cause mischief throughout the film. When they sing their song, We Are Siamese, if you please, definitely left a lot of people shocked. The song is full of stereotypes, and the animators also drew the breed of Asian cats to fit the racial stereotype. They have slanted eyes, and they sing in broken English with a noticeable accent.
Were we finding baby? There are milk nearby.
In the late 19th century, similar stereotypes were used to reinforce the fear of the so-called Yellow Peril. It was the notion that East Asians posed a threat to the rest of the world that led to strict anti-immigration policies to keep them out of the United States. Wow. Pocahontas. Nobody expects Disney movies to be completely historically accurate, but when they created Pocahontas, they definitely changed their story quite a bit. To start, Pocahontas wasn't even her real name. She was born around 1596 and given the name Amonute. Pocahontas happened to be her nickname, which means playful one or ill-behaved child. Another part of the history that was changed was the age of Pocahontas. At that time, she really would have been around 11 or 12, but in the movie, it looks like she is a full-grown woman. John Smith would have been in his mid to late 20s, so it's not likely the two had feelings for one another. And if they did, ugh. A lot of people do not discuss the racial stereotypes this film presents. It depicts Native Americans as 2 types of people. The noble, who is a symbol of goodness, and the vicious savage, who is full of violence, rage, and anger. Both are extremely offensive to their culture. Many people also believe that the movie was a whitewash to Native American history by glossing over the fact that they suffered extreme violence and prejudice from the white
Starting off with Jordan, okay. He's a Jewish man.
What's a Jewish person's favourite type of party?
What?
A pity party.
That wasn't funny.
I don't think so, no, is it? No.
Not wrong.
All right, we got a laugh from him. Good start.
What's the difference between a potato and a Jewish boy? The potato keeps its skin.
Okay.
Ooh, if she had a reaction to that one, she's not going to like the rest.
That's sort of funny. It's a dick joke. So that works.
You're funny.
Why is Israel so obsessed with the West Bank? Because it's the only bank they don't fully control.
Well, that's good. I didn't see it going there. Okay, I like that.
Across the line, but...
Yeah. Don't know much about banks.
If you think concentration is hard in this day and age of social media, try being a Jew in the 1940s.
Yikes.
Yeah, no.
Well, that's true. That would be hard.
Yeah, that's a tough correlation, the punchline from that one, but I liked it.
That's over the line. That's over the line. Definitely. Yeah. We've crossed Benny's line.
Why don't Jewish people change their gender? Because they can't claim it back on tax.
She didn't like that one.
That's funny. That's good. I like that one.
That's just not landing at all for me. It is for me. It is for you. I've known a few and worked for a few. Wow. This is surprising. He's laughing at a lot of them.
I don't know if it crossed the line for me, but it's funny.
Why don't Jewish people blink?
Okay, this one will definitely cross the line.
Why? Because every time they do, they have a tiny nightmare about the Holocaust.
Jeez, okay.
God.
Oh, she laughed at that one. Definitely over the line. Yep.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope you've peed well and drunk enough water for the next pee. Next, we have Emma Holmes. Emma and I actually need to have more than 1.5 meter distance because she has a restraining order against me. As some of you may not know, I'm her biggest fan, aka her biggest stalker. But yeah, I'm very excited to welcome her to stage. So the stage is yours, Emma.
Thank you very much. I haven't been here before at all. I'm already kind of straddling the wire. All is off to a great start. Thank you. I feel a little honored to have a stalker. It's about time, if you ask me. Okay, I am quite nervous. I have not performed in a long time. That sounds wrong. And I've not done a public speaking is public speech, right? For a very, very long time. So bear with me if I'm a little rusty around the edges. We're going to have a good time this evening, and we are probably not going to agree on all the points that I really enjoyed the last talk, and I think we're going to touch on similar issues here from a very different perspective, and I'm kind of curious what you guys are going to say. So, I also apologize. I use much simpler words than the last speaker, but I speak at the speed of a train. I try to speak slower, and it never usually works. So if I speed up too much, I'll get someone to wave at me. All right, so let's begin with some house rules. First off, I will not be doing comedy this evening, in spite of what the flyer said. I'm basically here for a chat. I was asked to give a talk on comedy, maybe around the theme of cancel culture, and in the end, I'm trying to answer kind of ultimately the question, does comedy have a future? You know, when you're talking about serious topics in comedy, such as cancel culture and political correctness, offensive jokes, they're quite difficult to make lighthearted. And to be honest with you, they're so nuanced that I would need, you know, in this short, I don't have the time or space to really touch upon everything I'd like to touch upon. I would need like a 6-week course to really cover everything about comedy and its future. So Wageningen University, hit me up if that's of interest. Professor Emma, imagine it. No, that's not a good idea. Anyway, now what I am keenly aware of, though, is that throughout the next 3 days of conference or 2 days of conference, you are going to be exposed to a lot of very liberal opinions on comedy. The idea that we shouldn't racially stereotype, the idea that maybe comedy should be curated, that we should use inclusive language. And my aim today is to give you a different opinion. I don't want to change your opinion, but I'd like to give you my side of the story as a comedian to allow you, I guess, to challenge your own assumptions. So here's my proposal. I am going to do a talk of hopefully about 25 minutes, and then we're going to open up for a Q&A. And I want you to challenge me, okay? I want you to ask the difficult questions, and I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. The questions that you are uncomfortable to ask to a comedian, I am here for you. Will I have an answer? Who knows? And if at the end of the day we've had two different sides of the same story told, and we're willing to talk about it, then I will see that as a success. I am surprisingly well placed to talk on this topic because I am both an audience member and a stand-up comedian, which means that, and those are the two parties that really play in the future of comedy, because if one falls out of love with the other, then it's going to be hard to recover from it. And kind of interestingly, the things that, something that really irritates me in life, and this comes from my own side as well as from other people, are something I like to call snap decision opinions. They're opinions that are not formulated through education nor through reasoning. They are solely formulated through feeling, and they're instantaneous like that. And to maybe try and make things a little bit more tangible, let's give an example. The example could come from cancel culture. Not all cancel culture, but a good chunk of it. In the end of the day, as stand-up comedians, we produce an art form which is intended to be seen in its whole, in its entirety. We do a 1-hour stand-up set, and that's how we intend you to see it. And many times where cancel culture comes from is that one of these little clips, one of these little moments of offense, these little moments of difficult jokes, is taken out from that. It's then picked up by the media, and it is spread all over with headlines like, this comedian is a racist, and it has been taken out of context, among other problems. So, and what scares me more is that I don't have a problem with that theory, the idea behind cancel culture. If you are offended by something and you don't want to be involved with it, that is perfectly okay by me. What worries me is this kind of societal approach of being, see a headline, believe a headline. Because most people who are involved with, this kind of cancel culture, they see the headline and they make up their minds already. Less of them will read the article, even fewer of them will watch the 1-minute clip, and most of them will not see the entirety of the piece as it was intended to be seen. And this is scary on two fronts, because what's happening is we have two very big camps forming. Camp 1 is that this is super offensive, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. Camp 2 is this is perfectly okay to talk about and to make fun of. And what we find is that neither side of the conversation is listening to one another. And as both a comedian and as a human, that's scary, because these snap decision opinions, they're not conducive to discussion. They, and it used to be that you to have a polite conversation, you used to have to just follow the advice of Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, which is to talk about the weather and your health. But then with climate change and COVID-19, even those are not safe bets anymore. And we live in a society whereby every conversation has the possibility to become an argument. We have, even the most mundane of topics have people passionately fighting for and against, and it's not normal. Pew Research did a study of 10,000 adults and found out that we are the most polarized we have ever been throughout history. But much more scarily, we are also the least likely to compromise. What that means is we're not listening to one another. Similarly, we make decisions based on what we already assume to be true. And again, we're not listening. And conversation is about talking and about listening. And it's a fine balance. And somewhere along the way, we have lost that balance. And here comes an unpopular opinion. as part of the Wageningen community, we are a much bigger problem than any of us would like to admit. Because at the end of the day, we are one of the extremist parties. Okay? All it takes is to live here for a year, go back home to wherever is not here, discover that all your friends still eat meat. None of them believe that meat or their car has anything to do with the climate problem, and that one of your prominent family members is probably a racist. It is just, we are pushing forward this green movement because we believe it to be true, that it is to be the part of the future. And similarly, we have a load of people out there who think we're trying to fix something that isn't broken. So once again, we find ourselves with this awkward situation of two sides of one conversation not listening. And here comes the thing. This is where comedy comes into it, all right? Because comedy is the most wonderful art form. It is powerful. It has the possibility to make you stop and to listen, to make you think. It says the things that you don't want to say or that you're too embarrassed to say, and it starts endless numbers of conversation every day. By means of an example, I don't have an audience, but let's pretend I do. Who here, you guys can answer this question, who here can name more of their local council members than they can comedians? Any of you? None of you. And I imagine it's the same for you at home. And why is that relevant, you may ask? Good question. We don't listen to our politicians. That's the sad fact. We don't really listen to them anymore. However, we sure as hell listen to our comedians. We listen to John Oliver, we listen to Trevor Noah, and we listen to Arjen Lubach. I know him. And here's the thing. One of the great reasons for it is because they have created this wonderful art form called infotainment. Serious news told in an entertaining way. And in doing so, they have created this great thing, which is short and it's punchy and it's funny, which makes it so much more memorable, and it's digestible. And to be honest with you, it's not completely overwhelming, leaving me with 37 years of therapy needed after every news broadcast. It is a powerful art form, and it is, you can tell I feel passionately about it, my heart is racing. It is a powerful art form, and yes, they use humor as a tool. And like all comedians that have gone before them, and all comedians that will come after them, they are pushing the boundaries of what is considered funny, they are pushing the boundaries of what is considered socially acceptable, and there was a last part to this, which was very powerful. There was a forthcoming. Anyway, can I ask you a favor, my lovely friend here? Can you turn me off? That doesn't sound right at all, does it? Not there. Over there on the flippy screen, because I am distracting myself. I clearly have some kind of weird obsession with looking at myself, and I can't do it. This is a lot better. Okay, so. Like I was saying, infotainment, fantastic tool. And what I wanted to say is that they put their heads on the line, because here's the reality, folks. Comedy is hard, okay? It is difficult, it is lonely, it is not terribly fun to do. It's hard in the mind, hard in the soul, and it's terribly hard in the wallet. Genuinely, I would know. But something I want to show you is that comedians are like superheroes, okay? Because we all have interesting backstories. Spider-Man, bit by a radioactive spider. Superman, hey, turns out he's an alien. Aquaman discovers that he can speak to fish for up to an hour. Very specific. And then what happens is they muddle about life, trying to learn how to use these powers and get on with them, and they make mistakes, and they fix them, and they try again, and eventually they become superheroes. There is no superhero school, and there is no comedy school either. There is no comedy school. There are there are art schools and there are drama schools, and art schools teach you the beauty of painting and physical and visual arts, and drama schools teach you how to perform and how to be in theater plays and playwright and dance and sing and use music, but none of them teach you comedy. None of them teach you, in particular, stand-up comedy. Like superheroes, us comedians have to find out how to do it the hard way. You know, even comedy's own origin story is kind of rough. Do any of you know how stand-up comedy got its name? No, because it's an interesting name, stand-up comedy. So it started back in the 1940s when stand-up comedy was slowly coming to be a thing. And comedy was originally part of a big variety show. They would have these 10, 15-minute sets where they could perform sketches and perform character comedy. And in doing so, a few of these comedians, a select few, wanted to kind of scale it back. They wanted to strip back the art form, take away the slapstick, take away, the sketches and the costumes, and they wanted to make it just about the art form of the joke, the art form of words. So they went to the Variety Theatre and they asked, "Can we do this?" And they said no. So they decided to break away from the Variety Theatre and basically take any venue that would let them perform. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, the only people who would pick them up and give them spots to perform were money laundering, mob-owned casinos. And they got these super short spots, like literally a couple of minutes each. They were basically a distraction and they were not allowed to sit. And that is how stand-up comedy became a scene. And the thing with, okay, so here's the question for you that you might have. It's like, all right, you can't go to school to do it. How do you become a comedian? How do you go about doing it? Well, I can never say her name, Mayim Bialik, such a good comedian. Amy from The Big Bang Theory, she has a PhD in neuroscience. Who else do we have? Rebel Wilson from Pitch Perfect and many other things. John Cleese from Monty Python, both have law degrees. Rowan Atkinson, also Mr. Bean, he happens to be an electrical engineer. Ken Jeong is a doctor. The list is endless. Comedians come from all walks of life, and that goes both ways. Jim Carrey was a janitor. Whoopi Goldberg, who is my favorite human ever, used to put makeup on dead people in funeral homes. And she was also a phone sex operator, so there we are. Robin Williams was a mime, he was a street performer. Ricky Gervais was actually the frontman of a dance troupe. And Emma Holmes was a food technologist. We are everywhere. What we do share in common is that we all come from the same place. We started the same way. At some open mic night in a dodgy pub, trying to make a bunch of really unenthusiastic strangers laugh in the dark. And the thing is that, because there is no school, because this is, the thing with comedy is that because there is no school, the only way we can learn what is funny is to test it out, to try it out. And yes, that means that sometimes newbie comedians are offensive. It means that sometimes really experienced comedians are offensive too. We have no choice but to try and to fail and to improve. This is our education. And the thing that I think a lot of people forget, and this is where we disagree with the last speaker, whose name I'd like to try and pronounce, but it's got a Dutch G in it, and that's where things go wrong. But the thing we disagree on is that humor and offense are very, very similar on like a chemical level. Humor, like the art of stand-up comedy, is infinitely complex and really difficult and confusing, and it's hard to do, but the thing that is super simple in many ways is that what makes people laugh is actually two things. One is surprise, the other is embarrassment. Those are the two things that most humans laugh at. And similarly, offense comes also from surprise and embarrassment. Take it a step further, a joke is infinitely more funny when we can relate to it, when we feel like we are part of that joke, that we can see someone in that. And just as similarly, offense is so much more hurtful when we relate to it. They are both very personal things. Being a stand-up comedian, it's like walking a tightrope, okay? There is a very, very thin line of what is funny, and then there's two very big empty planes on either side. One is not funny, the other is offense. And we have to learn to walk this tightrope, and we wobble, okay? We wobble and we almost fall off into the not funny category, and sometimes we wobble and we almost fall off into the offensive category. And other times, we full-on faceplant into both of them. Sometimes at the same moment. It is painful. It is proper painful. I think what is so easily forgotten about stand-up comedy is that it's an art form. Okay, it is easy for us to sit there as audience members in the front row of a comedy night and to watch these, nonchalant, charming people go up on stage and talk to me as if they're my best friends. And they chat, and it's natural, and it's relaxed, and it's funny. And they don't rehearse, right? They just get up there, and then out spills these jokes and these amazing stories. And, what you forget is that is very much part of the act, is to make it look like it is we are just talking off the top of our heads, as if this is just dawned on us right now. That is part of stand-up comedy. That is part of the act. It's part of the art. The number of times after shows that people have come up to me and gone, he is such a natural. And I'm like, no, he works really hard to be good at comedy. Okay? He works really hard. He works proper hard to do it. Like, we, as comedians, we write jokes and we fail jokes and we improve jokes and we try again and we do it. And the circle goes on. We improve, we fail, we improve, we fail. And it just keeps going until eventually we perfect the joke. And then, because society is mean, even comedic perfection is hugely subjective, all right? You and me, we do not share the same sense of humor, okay? We have two very different senses of humor, depending on our upbringing, our socio-political beliefs, our age, where we're from, what we understand of language. Humor means so many different things. So comedic perfection is actually, it's perfection for a very small slice of society at a very specific time. That is comedic perfection. And that we very easily forget. So, now you've heard all that, you must be wondering, why on earth are you a stand-up comedian? It's a very good question, and I ask myself this regularly. I don't know what possessed me. I genuinely don't. I think it must have been ego. There is nothing else that it could have been. In the run-up to a particular moment in time, which made me agree to do a stand-up comedy night, I had a few friends who had, over the past month in this running up, had gone, Emma, have you ever thought about doing your stories on stage? Because you're kind of funny, I tell you what, the more you hear that, the more you believe it, okay? Confirmation bias. And I was already kind of, something was going on. I was like, okay, maybe I'm funny. Because that's how life works. And then I did something, I'm a Facebook comedian, okay? So I posted on Wageningen Student Plaza, I posted a bike, okay? I was selling my bike and I gave it a name and I gave it characteristics and a story and it was kind of amusing and I was like, all in the name of sales, okay? And then this random guy contacts me and goes, hey, you seem like a funny gal, do you do stand-up comedy? And I was like, no, not really. And he goes, well, we have an open mic coming up, would you consider doing it? And I was like, well, I hadn't thought about it before, but yeah, totally. And instantly regretted this decision. I have never wanted to backpedal so hard, okay? Within half an hour, was sweating. All right? I was like, I need to tell him that I can't do this. Who the hell, what is this? A moment of madness? Self-adoration? What's going on with me? I can't do this. And I was like, but then he's a stranger and I'm English and I feel awkward at the best of times and I can't tell him that I don't want to do it because that's kind of rude. And basically, out of politeness, I became a stand-up comedian. So here's the thing, the next 6 weeks of my life in the run-up to that event were the worst I have ever experienced. I hated myself, I hated other people, I felt sick the entire time. I was like, what am I doing with my life? But I'm a strong, independent woman and I pushed through it. And I went and I performed and irritatingly, I got the biggest high I have ever had before and possibly will ever have again afterwards, and I was completely and utterly hooked. Which is annoying, all right? And the thing is, I did the whole stand-up comedy journey that I've just told you about. I would travel to events and I would perform. I'd go for 2.5-hour train rides one way to perform for at maximum 10 minutes, most of the time less, and then travel all the way home. I would write and I would rewrite and I'd improve and I'd try to get better. And within a year, I had made an established name for myself in the very specific international comedy in the Netherlands scene. But I had not made a name for myself as a stand-up comedian. I had made a name for myself as an MC, a master of ceremonies, a host, the glue that holds the bit together in the middle. A bit like what happened earlier. That's what happened, the glue. And one of the reasons I had done this is because of my improvisation, the ability to get up and, in essence, talk about nothing to people. And the reason I think that I was good at it is because I got this terrible adrenaline rush every time. I was like, oh my God, I don't have a show, what am I going to do? okay, we better work it out. And that was a driving force for me. But in doing so, I was slowly performing stand-up comedy less and less. And I decided that I kind of need to take like a conscious step back and work on my stand-up. But the thing is, when I decided to take the step back, the media took a step up, and I started to become really confused. So during my step back, I had planned to take the time to write more, to get things out there. But just as this was happening, we suddenly saw a lot of headlines coming out about these huge name comedians who are being, facing massive backlash for one joke in their entire set. 90s sitcoms getting cancelled because what was considered okay then is no longer considered okay now. And as a young comedian, that was terrifying, because what ended up happening is I couldn't write. I was filtering myself before I would even put my pen to the paper. And it was worrisome. It was worrisome in a much bigger way. It was worrisome. I started to worry about things that were completely out of my control, but felt like huge societal issues. Like, for example, how do you teach kids to have a sense of humor if you don't let them make mistakes? I couldn't get my head around that. Any comedian will tell you that you will be offensive at some point. And kids learning to be funny are offensive. We need to teach them after the fact. We can't cut them off before, because you will lose all that potential. Similarly, what happens if we keep cancelling things? We are exposed to less variety. And in doing so, I was afraid that we'd all become the same person. And that is a really scary prospect, because as humans, we need to be challenged. We need to face difficult conversations. And in cancelling things, we're not having difficult conversations. We're avoiding difficult conversations. And that didn't feel okay. I felt like, for me, at least from my perspective, I would much rather sit through something that offended me, if it left me thinking, than to watch everything that was kind of okay for everyone. I never thought I would develop as a person. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there's no tasteless comedy out there, that there's no offensive comedians out there, because of course there is. That's why freedom of speech exists. In the same way that the artist has a right to produce provocative art, you have a right to critique it. But it goes both ways, and we must remember this. In many ways, like, now it's not my own face distracting me, it's just me distracting myself. It's something I feel so passionately about, and that's why it becomes difficult to talk about, because you end up overthinking everything. You want to show all the nuances, and you want to show everything like this. But freedom of speech exists for a reason. And to be honest with you, if we were to go back to our example of cancel culture, we can talk about a few little things here. The first one is that I think Donald Glover, you may know Donald Glover. He is a very prolific comedian. He's a young African-American comedian. He's known for his work on Community, Atlanta. He's also Childish Gambino, an incredibly accomplished musician. He does not struggle with money, unlike the rest of us. But he put something of culture which I thought was very prominent, which was, and I'm going to quote him because I think it's wrong not to quote them, we're getting boring stuff because people are afraid of getting cancelled. So they feel they can only experiment with aesthetic. And what worries me is that I feel that this problem should not be solved by cutting off the source. Because like I said, that stops the conversation. What we should be doing is we should be getting offended. And we should be then taking a moment to have these awkward conversations and to improve as a society, to push, to learn from these moments. He also said, in the same talk that he's sick of white people cancelling things on my behalf. And I thought it was a very prominent comment, because as a member of the LGBT community, surprise if anyone didn't know, and as a woman, I'm also sick of people cancelling things on my behalf. I want to be offended. I want to sit there and make up my own mind about how I feel. And then if I'm not okay with it, it's up to me to go and challenge it. As humans, we are not meant to be comfortable. That's not how humanity progresses. We are meant to be uncomfortable. We are meant to experience difficult things and to improve from them. And yes, we make mistakes. And yes, we should learn from these mistakes. We should apologize for these mistakes, but we should also forgive ourselves for making them. So here's the big question, right? Does comedy have a future? It's not for me to answer, really. I knew when I gave that question in as a title that it should have a yes or a no answer. I knew that everything, it would not be a yes or no answer. There's nothing, nothing related to it. And I want you to know that I can't make you feel a certain way about a piece of stand-up comedy, but you should, and you should have all the right in the world to feel a certain way about a piece of comedy. If we didn't make you feel anything, then we're doing our jobs wrong. But what I will put to you is, I'll put to you this idea. Sometimes we are genuinely offended, but other times, are we really offended, or are we just scared and afraid to hear something that maybe needs to be said? Because at the end of the day, comedy is art. And that was me. So, thank you. Casual applause as we do this moment. Right, blow me away with your questions. I'm exhausted. How do you get people to listen? I think it's reciprocal. I think if you listen to people, hopefully people will listen to you. There are some people who don't, and you're fighting a losing battle. But I think patience is a big part. Actually, if you want to see a really good person who's very good at negotiating and making people listen, watch like serious interviews with Trevor Noah, where he deals with difficult topics. He's a fantastic negotiator. He's patient, he takes his time, he calms the situation down. Yeah, I mean, you can't force people to listen. All you can do is hope, and to listen to them in return and hope that they share the same thing with you. I should be talking this way, sorry. It's odd when the noise comes from this direction.
And the next question is, do you have jokes that you regret telling or backlash,
Good question. No, I don't. I only regret telling them because they weren't funny. But I'm very boring. I'm a super family-friendly comedian, not because just because I can't pull off edgy. Look at me. So I don't have many terribly offensive jokes. I mean, maybe I do. I do joke about the French because I grew up with them. I joke about the English and the Irish because I am those as well. But no, I don't have any regrets. I don't think I faced any backlash. We did have 1-2 times where people have walked out of comedy shows here in this theatre. Actually, there it comes to. Sometimes, this guy just wasn't funny. He was just full on insulting. It was like one topic to the next, and it was just after the plane had gone missing. Do you remember that one was it Malaysia? And he made a joke about that, and it was incredibly insensitive and ill-timed, and I wouldn't have called it a joke. It was more of a statement. It was offensive. So. Yes, I can repeat the question.
So the next question is, how do you think a show like The Office would do if it was aired today?
How do I think a show like The Office would do? This is hard because I haven't actually seen The Office. How would a show like The Office do if it was aired today? I think in the current climate, we're going through a moment of change. Very clearly, as was spoken about earlier, there are switches. We are all learning to deal with whether it be cancel culture or difficult comedy, or is it offensive, is it not? I don't think it would do terribly well because it uses a lot of stereotypes and stuff. And that's only from bits I've seen, so I'm not the best place to say it because I haven't watched much of it, I'm afraid. If you give me another one, different sitcom, maybe I can help. Yes. That's a very good question, and I'm not 100% sure. So this is, sorry. The question about listening was actually in regards to the first thing I said, which is that people who are offended that they don't listen. It is, hopefully, I like to think it's a minority. I think the thing is, when it comes to this, because it's such a big thing and because it's usually online, I think if you're challenged by your housemates or your friends, then you have the opportunity to do this. You know, when they had the example earlier of like, you'd laugh at a joke. What was the question we had for the last speaker? When everyone laughs at a joke that you're not comfortable with. I don't agree with that answer, actually. And in my opinion, I think you probably should approach, maybe not in the middle of the dinner, but like afterwards be like, hey man, like I thought that wasn't so cool. Like, because many times people make jokes without realizing what the effect it has on people. And unfortunately, it is a learning curve for everyone, right? So you have to, they have to be open to hear what you have to say, but you also have to say it. And yes, that's uncomfortable, but it's also uncomfortable to hear that you hurt someone. So I don't know how you make people listen. I think it's about having conversations. It's about challenging people's opinions. If you meet someone who's very stubborn, it's like, no, I don't believe this is true. You could start by asking them, right, have you seen it? Because a lot of the time they haven't. And I think that's where, you challenge them. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I should be able to repeat things better than I am currently. What is your opinion on people saying that making offensive jokes just shows a lack of creativity? That's really hard because, that's a very difficult question to answer because it's so situational. Because I think most offensive jokes, they can be very creative. They can be things that you really didn't see coming. I don't agree that it's a lack of creativity. I think it may be a bad choice of topic for your audience. It's a really interesting one because it's so situational. Because it can be that it was basically he was a third or fourth time comedian who performed here, and he did this thing and it wasn't a joke. There was no punchline to it.
Hello?
Something works.
Something works? So does this one work?
Hello.
Is this one?
Hello?
This one?
We found it.
I could plug in more than before. Oh, let's Right, okay, well that makes life... Is it still on? Can you... Hello? Can you... One of them works, excellent. Well, this isn't awkward at all. Right, question again. What does my life come to? Let's take a moment here. Right. Do you think it's an okay thing to do to make jokes about horrible things? Example, the Holocaust. When they're obviously jokes. Or can topics like that stay too sensitive to make any jokes about? That is a genuinely very, very interesting question, and obviously a very hard one to answer. It's interesting. I ask this question every time we do a stand-up comedy workshop. I ask them, do you think there's anything that you can't joke about? And most people say no. I think we can joke about everything. The interesting one that I do, because I found regularity in this, is that I ask the male stand-up comedian workshoppers whether they believe you can joke about rape. And almost all of them say yes, and almost all the women say no. And that I thought was a really interesting moment, because that is one of those things where it really is physical oppression of people, and something I am not okay making a joke about. I don't think it's funny in any way. Ironically, you can kind of make murder as a general verb funny. But there's something about rape that's just too gross to it. For me, that's a no-go subject, and I know for many female comedians it is too. That being said, I'm open-minded to, if someone does a great joke and I'm like, okay, no, that's fair enough. But it has to be sensitive. It has to be thought through. It has to be clever. Things like the Holocaust and so on, no, I think, I mean, this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I do think you can make jokes about them. I've seen very, very clever jokes about them. It can be super awkward, but again, here's the big debate. Is it better to still at least remind ourselves that it happened and to have that conversation afterwards and to go, hey, is it okay to joke about that? Is it okay to talk about the Holocaust, or should we leave it in the past? Or, do you just avoid it completely and avoid that difficult conversation? Relating to this.
A trend I've noticed is that people talk about people being triggered as if that means the same thing as being offended.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so let me repeat that again. Yeah. Sorry, repeat it. Say it again for me.
So, it is a lot.
You'd think that someone of I have a bachelor's of science and I cannot remember one question. Okay. Is her name Sarah Hames? Because that's my girlfriend and she does that kind of thing. Evelyn, nice to meet you, Evelyn. Oh, there's a paragraph here? Excellent. Oh, we lost it. It's gone.
No, but you're off camera now, so I'll just repeat it.
Okay, you repeat it to me and I'll repeat it again.
So, a trend she's noticed is that people talk about people being triggered.
Okay, so a trend that she's noticed is that people talk about being triggered as if that means the same thing as being offended. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I think that's a language problem.
Yeah, and that's where actually being triggered is a very serious thing for survivors of trauma.
Whereas being triggered is a very serious thing for survivors of trauma, okay?
Also when what they experience is joked about.
Also when what they've experienced is joked about, yeah.
This is a big issue for her when she thinks about the borders of joking.
And this is a big issue for her when she thinks about the borders of joking.
A lot of what she considers not done in comedy.
Sorry, I forgot to repeat. A lot of what she considers not done in comedy has to do with mental health. And it's often invisible. And doesn't necessarily look like a panic. This is quite a big paragraph. It doesn't necessarily look like a panic attack.
So she says it's a very complex issue, but she's very curious to hear your thoughts.
I think it's a really interesting issue, Evelyn, and thank you for bringing it up, because my first instinct is that that's a language problem. The word we've chosen is inappropriate. Trigger, in my mind, as a native English speaker, simply means to feel something about, to be triggered. But we've also used it now as this mental health part, and they're the same word. And trigger, to me, doesn't mean anything major. And I didn't know about this. This is what this meant in this respect, and I'm very grateful that you brought this up to me. Yeah, it's a big difference. And I think, especially if you've experienced trauma yourself, and that these are things that really ache at you deep inside, that's a very different problem than like you said, being offended, or being offended on someone else's behalf. Can you repeat the exact question again? Not the paragraph, just the question.
The question says that it's a very complex issue.
Yeah.
She's curious to hear your thoughts.
I agree with you. I think that is a genuinely very complex issue, and I'm kind of curious on your behalf. Like, what do you, especially if you are, you're a survivor of trauma. Like, how do you find things like comedy nights? Because you can't plan. You shouldn't have to give up a night out in favor of not feeling like you're going to be triggered. And I'm kind of curious also to hear your thoughts, because as an organizer, this is a really interesting topic. So I throw the question back to you as well, Evelyn. But I agree, it's complicated. Yeah, I know. There's usually a delay on these things. You kind of some of the delays I've dealt with Kahoot quizzes are like 25 seconds. It's quite a thing that the answers come up way before the question does. So yeah. Any other questions for me? Finished? No, come on. Challenge me more. Bring it on. Ask a difficult one. Don't use difficult words. I get confused. Bachelor of Science ain't doing me that well. All right? Yeah, triggering's an interesting one, no? Like, do you ever feel guilty for... That's a great question. Do I ever feel guilty for laughing? Of course. There are moments when you're like, I shouldn't laugh at that, but it's funny. And yeah, I do feel a bit guilty. It's never really it's more like guilty pleasure. Like, I don't feel bad about it, but I do feel kind of like, oh, that's kind of awkward, I shouldn't do that. I think all comedians do. It's kind of part of the job is that you're like, I shouldn't really laugh at that, but it's especially I think if you're a lover of the art form and you can see the skill in joke writing and how hard it is. It's a difficult thing to do. And then to see someone pull off something that's awkward and hilarious at the same time, you also kind of almost laugh also out of appreciation for the art. But yeah, definitely feel guilty about laughing at things. What is a joke that can always make me laugh? This is terrible. Christmas cracker jokes. Are they so good? Okay, let me think of one. Okay, why could the skeleton not go to the ball? He had nobody to go with. Isn't that genius? I think they're so good. I love Christmas cracker jokes. It drives my mother insane. I don't even know any ones. Why did the orange stop rolling down the hill? Rolling down the hill? Yeah. Why did he stop rolling? No, he ran out of juice. I don't do any of these kind of jokes. I love them. They're proper dad. Yeah, if I was of the right sex, I would make a great dad joke kind of person. Yeah, I'm always good with one of those. I'm trying to think of what other things really make me giggle. It's really hard when you try to think of it on the spot. You're like, what does make me laugh? So many things. I am a huge lover of old British sitcoms, and I'm like obsessed with them. I have a whole collection of DVDs because you can't stream them online. So yeah, I was like, whether it be, I really love these kind of things. Sorry. No, older than that. Yeah, older than Gavin and Stacey. Yes, Minister. Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. You are my new favorite person. You have been ousted from the #1 fan spot. Keeping up appearances. What a great shout. As time goes by. That less so, but it's okay. But it's not a sitcom. To be fair, it's not a sitcom, right? So I give you that one. Yeah, Surgical Spirits, As Time Goes By, Porridge, Open All Hours. I'm obsessed. I love this kind of comedy. And it's like, I guess it's also kind of family friendly in some ways. Like, it's not. There are offensive parts, especially now that you look back and you're like, oh, that's a little bit awkward. But there are also very clever jokes. So that always makes me laugh. I can watch one of those for hours on end. And Friends, the only American sitcom. Yeah.
She says, thanks for your response. Luckily, I've come very far and I can handle things, but I've had to lock out before or avoid things.
Yeah.
But it makes me very aware of others who might go through this.
Okay, so basically that you've made a big step in your journey. You've come a lot further. You're better now. Yeah, I mean, we're going for a reviewed version because we've seen that I can't remember a question, let alone a paragraph. But it does make you think about others. I think it's a great thing to think about. I don't think there's anything as organizers we can do. We have no control over what people perform. We, as an MC, literally my job is to be like, okay, well, that didn't go well. Let me try and fix it. So there's not much that I can do in regards to organizing it or in hosting it. Just pick up the pieces when things go wrong. But it's a very interesting topic, and I love that you brought up the idea of triggered versus offended, and that will have me thinking for a little while because I've never thought of the word triggered as meaning something in a mental health state, and I feel that should have possibly a bit more promotion to it, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Like that we should know about this more. It feels like I was unaware of the word in that sense.
She also elaborates that I would say there is a big difference in the target of the joke rather than just mentioning it. The problem is in joking about survivors if you get what I mean. I see comedy where the joke is on rape culture, not survivors.
Yeah, joking about survivors, that's not cool. Like, I can't think of a single situation where, I don't know, unless you've been through it yourself, because the also thing is that, at the end of the day, as comedians, we usually talk about what we know. And all of us, in some form or fashion, suffer from some kind of mental illness usually. Whether it be depression, it's a very, very common thing to find in stand-up comedy because it's lonely. But I think, the idea of the idea of people joking about the victims, that's not okay. But yeah, interesting topic. Anything slightly light-hearted to end on? Because that would be awkward. Like, I feel like we should do something a bit more.
Maybe you can ask the camera if they have any final questions.
Do you have any final questions? I'm saying this in my most sultry. I don't do sultry very well, do I? I'll try again. Even my fake voice is oh, sounding not funny. Do you have any final questions for me? As I use this spittle stick that we have shared amongst ourselves in this COVID-friendly environment. Let me know in the comments. It's your last opportunity to speak to me ever. What's happened to my voice? It's gone out. I've become the old person. Yeah, last opportunity. We'll give it a second. In the meantime, I can't believe you've watched Yes Minister.
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh man, this is like I found a kindred spirit. What can we do? So many good things. I hope you guys are excited for tomorrow's lineup too. Olivia is very funny. I don't know if Olivia's doing comedy or being like me and being like, no, I'm talking about something serious, but she's very funny. Olivia's very funny indeed. I can't because I'm doing a pub quiz tomorrow, unfortunately. Oh, pump it yeah, get excited, guys. So the next one tomorrow, there is a talk, which I would think would be very interesting on Dutch culture. If you want, there's some interesting things there, especially with the directness, also with comedy. There's also, we got Olivia Flood-Wiley, who's very funny. I enjoy her comedy, at least. And then I'm back on Monday. Hey, can't get enough of me. You're welcome to join us for a panel discussion. Sorry? Around 12? Is it during the lunchtime? Oh, that's good to know. I'm glad you told me, because I'm there. And I was like, yeah, it's an evening thing. Fantastic. It's a lunchtime thing. That's great. So around 12.
3 final questions.
3 final questions. Shoot!
Okay, the first one.
Yes. Do you often do weird voices? In improv, yes. When I do when I'm performing improv on stage here, I do a lot of weird voices, but none of them are very good. I am terrible at accents. My 2 other improvisers that I perform with, fantastic accent people. I just turn to a different person, a voice no one has ever heard of. I don't do that many new voices. It's a new skill I'm acquiring. I quite like doing it today. I thought it was quite funny, so I'm working on it.
And my very good friend Maddie Kozowski.
Sorry, say that again. Maddie Kozowski. That is a good name.
Yeah. He's
Half British. Look at you, darling. Finally, the people are back together.
He said this comedian Nick Mohammed.
Okay.
Basically said that you can tell somebody's ideas from how they deliver it. So you already touched upon with the guy in the Malaysia plane. Anything else about that?
Right. Let's start from the beginning again. So this comedian Nick Mohammed says that you can basically tell. What was that?
You can tell somebody's ideas from how they deliver it.
Tell somebody's ideas from how. That's an interesting point. Let's stop there for a second. I think there is a big thing. This is where basically you can usually tell if someone is meaning it as a joke or meaning it I guess it's a bit too personal, just from delivery. But you can't judge it on delivery because if you work in my industry, which is the amateur and semi-professional stand-up comedy industry, delivery is something that you learn with years of experience, and you learn how to do it and to do it right. I think what you can... I just burped into the microphone, sorry. I just realized, I was like, oh, awkward. What I think you can tell, though, is that, I think, one, how comedians react to being challenged, that's a very big thing. Because I think that shows how open-minded we are, if we are, not always. The other one is, I think... how the joke is approached, which I guess is kind of delivery, but like what angle they come in from. Is it a creative, a different view on something, or is it just the standard, I've always done this and this is how I do it and there's nothing new about it? What was the second part?
So you already touched upon it with the guy in the
Malaysian airplane, yeah. About that specifically? No, he just didn't get invited back. That was it. I was so insensitive because this was literally a week, 2 weeks after it had happened. Like, it was not okay. Everyone there, all the comedians were like, great, well, he's giving us a bad name. Who knows, maybe he'll see this. Sorry if you're watching. Also not sorry. Oh, interesting. Carmen Esposito. Carmen Esposito is a fantastic comedian. I think she's hilarious. I've not seen that part on rape jokes. Again, first off, she's a woman, so you don't know what she's experienced, you don't know what she's been through. Sexual assault is a thing, and it has to be talked about. I mean, I get really irritated the fact that we can, like, stand-up comedians can make, especially white men, can make loads of dick jokes and think it's acceptable, but we can't joke about our periods. Like, this is where you have a lot of comments, all right? It's not okay to joke about vaginas. I mean, it doesn't even saying it feels weird, but, that's the society we live in. Yeah, I'll have a look at that, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then the last one.
The last one. Blow me away with this last question.
I've been referring to weird voices, but I'm not sure. What do you think about them?
What do I think about them? Just them. Like it's a hidden occult, whether it's weird voices or anything else. I quite like these weird voices. I'm digging it. It's a good way of making you sound like a different person, as if you're having a conversation. Bit of a schizophrenic here with myself, like, hello, talking about it. But yeah, no, if that is the question. What do I think about my weird voices? I'm okay with them. Other people's weird voices? I'm also okay with them. Usually they do them much better than I do, but one day I will be that kind of comedian who's cool enough to do weird voices. In the meantime, I'll just be me, I guess. No, I'm sure I've forgotten things I wanted to say, but I hope that all I wanted to do today was to hopefully, I guess, open the discussion and to show you a different point of view, to show what it's like to be a stand-up comedian and what the reality is like as well. And if you take anything away from this, I just want you to be able to don't make split decisions. Go ahead, challenge, think about, talk about. But comedy is there for a reason. It's there to provoke. It's an art form that is provocative and it makes you talk, and that's also the beauty of it. And I think suppressing the talking in humor is very worrisome. So do consider that. Anyway, that's me. Thank you. Would you like one of these 4 microphones that I have hoarded? I would suggest this one because we think it works, but who knows? So thank you very much for having me. I hope this has been interesting. I'm still talking, I'm so sorry. It's been a long time, okay? I will see you. Yeah, just take it away from me. Let me leave. I'm leaving, I promise. Here you are. I'll be back on Monday at 12.
Thank you, Emma, so much for that wonderful, amazing segment. And I hope you guys also enjoyed it. This is the final part of today's show or event. And we hope to see you again tomorrow at 7. We have an amazing speaker and a comedian lined up again. So stay tuned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.